I think I'd like to create like Billy Wilder. I'd show you the apartment and tell you something like it hot. Or maybe, like Mr. Hitchcock, I'd make you scared of heights, ropes, birds, and binoculars. But until then, all I have is this dime store cinema.
Hello, YouTube, internet, world. Welcome back to another episode of Dime Store Cinema on the road. Let's talk movies. Today, I'd like to talk to you about the Bob Hope classic, My Favorite Brunette. Now, the reason I want to talk about this movie is, one, I just watched it today, again, for the probably 178th time, and two, because it's been a really long time since I've seen a genuinely good spoof movie. And this would definitely classify as a spoof because it's taking from all the classic film noir that had come out up to that point. And what's great, what separates it from so many spoof movies is that take away all the comedy and all the silliness, and you're still left with, you know, a classic noir story. You have the femme fatale, you have mistaken identity, you have murder and intrigue and body doubles and double crosses and Peter Lorre as the villain, as one of the villains, as the henchman, and Lon Chaney Jr. as the muscle. It's just all of these elements put together already make a great movie. But then you cast Bob Hope as the main character, and he just does his shtick, his thing that he always does in this otherwise fairly serious movie, and it's absolutely hilarious. And you know, it helps the chemistry that he has with Dorothy Lamour, who they've been in several films together. I think the only two that I've seen, they were in Road to Bali together, and they were in this one together, and I think there was another Road 2 movie that she was in with Bob Hope and Bing Crosby. And it all comes together so beautifully, and so much better than most spoof movies. Most spoof movies, they rely just on the jokes, and that's a particular type of spoof that can work and it is a lot of fun. But the truly great ones have a mix of, you know, classic story structure and arc alongside of the humor, and most of the really good ones have everyone playing it straight, and it's just occurrences that happen around them that are the humor. You know, I look at you know, the Hot Shots movies. You know, everyone plays everything really straight in those movies. It's just, things are ridiculous, and that's a different type of spoof than this one is, because this one isn't so much about the gags, it's more about the dialogue and Bob Hope behaving erratically, because once again, dealing with mistaken identity, everyone thinks that he's a private investigator when in actuality he's a baby photographer. But he goes along with it because he wants to impress the woman, Dorothy Lamour. So it's this it's this great, it's along the lines of, you know, as far as more modern movies, you have the Bill Murray movie, The Man Who Knew Too Little, and that's one you don't hear too much about. I mean, as far as Bill Murray movies go, it is kind of, it's not groundbreaking and doesn't get recognized or remembered as much, and there might have even been a lot of people who didn't enjoy it as much as I did, but I absolutely loved it. But it's in the same kind of vein where you have everyone playing their role seriously. It's just the situations or the character and their hijinks that makes it funny. And so it's just this is a great example of that type of, not only that type of comedy, but that type of spoof movie. So I wanted to talk about it a little bit. And so the story is, you have Bob Hope, who plays a character, Ronnie Jackson. He's a child photographer. He really wants to be a private eye. He shares a building with a private eye, and he's always trying to get, there's some subtext that leads you to believe that he's consistently trying to get hired by the private eye to be his second, to help him out on cases. He buys a gun, and he creates a keyhole lens for his camera, and different things like that to try to get hired. And so Dorothy Lamour comes into the private eye's office. The private eye has vacated for the day, or for however long, and Bob Hope happens to be in his office. So she thinks that he is the private eye, and he goes along with it because, of course, Dorothy Lamour is a beautiful woman, and Bob Hope, if you know anything about Bob Hope and his shtick, he's very much about chasing the women. He tends to do it in an endearing way, sort of, most of the time. It's not as creepy as it could be when you put it that way, but in any case, that's what leads him on to this. And what follows is, I mean, pretty much a classic noir story where there's a body double for Dorothy Lamour's character's uncle, and they're trying to convince Bob Hope's character that Dorothy Lamour is crazy, which is why she hired them. They're saying that she's, paranoid schizophrenic. And so there's this kind of thing where who's he going to trust? Is he going to trust these people, this person posing as her uncle, or is he going to trust Dorothy Lamour? And for a while, he doesn't trust Dorothy Lamour, but he goes along with it because, once again, he's after the lady, blinded by her beauty, as it were. And then, through the course of, for the most part, accidents, he realizes that Dorothy Lamour is telling the truth, and through a series of incidents and hilarious bits, the criminals come to justice, and not before framing Bob Hope for the crimes, and he gets saved at the last minute before getting sentenced to the electric chair. All of which make this amazing homage and humorous version of the classic film noir movies that have come before it. There are even meta references to Bogart and other things like that. And it's all done through narration, Bob Hope narration, telling the story right before he gets executed in the electric chair. So it's the classic, you have the voiceover, the person telling the story, like Double Indemnity. You have Peter Lorre as the villain, like Maltese Falcon. You have references to Bogart and all of his noir movies, stuff like Key Largo and Maltese Falcon and The Big Sleep. All of these movies and so many more that I will not even come to my head at this point are referenced in this movie, subtly or not subtly, and it's a lot of fun. And I grew up on this movie. I probably in my mid-teens I started. We got a 2-movie collection. It was this movie. It was this movie, My Favorite Brunette, and Road to Bali. It was a double feature on a disc. You know, it's Bob Hope collection, and it just so happened that both of these movies had Bob Hope and Dorothy Lamour in them. And I used to watch this one more than Road to Bali. I enjoyed Road to Bali, but I enjoyed this one so much more because I'm a huge fan of film noir. Always have been since I was a wee lad. And I watched this movie a lot. This and Charade, I think I watched pretty much one after the other, and it was on repeat a lot of the times. I would just watch these movies over and over again because they, you know, the Charade was kind of like the comedic, over-the-top espionage film, and this was the comedic over-the-top noir film. So, like, they both had these elements of types of movies that I love, but were also very well crafted and very humorous and infectiously enjoyable. So, yeah, so I wanted to talk about it, partly because a lot of the movies that I've been talking about lately have been a little unpleasant. Not all of them, you know, I talked about Moana the other day, and you know, so not all of them, but a lot of them have been a little unpleasant. So I want to talk about a movie that is really family friendly and enjoyable, and I think anyone who enjoys film noir or comedy will really like this movie. I couldn't recommend it more highly. I think it's one of the forgotten gems that you don't hear too much about. And I want to talk about His Girl Friday for the same reason. Although I do hear about His Girl Friday from time to time, I still don't hear about it much. And I understand why. They're older movies. People don't like... There are too many new movies for many people to spend time talking about old movies. But, you know, I personally like a lot of them more than stuff that's coming out recently. So... that being said, I would suggest watching it. I think it's definitely worth your time. It's worth your money if you need to rent it, or even to buy it, because you can probably find it pretty cheap. I know we did. That double feature was pretty cheap. So if you are able to find it, I would definitely invest the time in watching it. So yeah, you know, My Favorite Brunette, and apparently he made one called My Favorite Blonde. Which I haven't seen yet, which I want to see. Apparently it's kind of along the same lines, dealing with the film noir genre, but like I said, I haven't seen it yet. So maybe I'll see that one at some point and do a review on it as well. Anyway, thank you all for watching. Please like, please subscribe if you're into that kind of thing, and I will talk to you all next time.